So the Diablo 4 dev update just happened earlier today, and we learned about all the new season mechanics coming for Season 2, the Season of Blood, and we also learned about their new quality of life changes that are coming to the game. So we learned about blood seals coming into the game, and they are kind of similar to Season 1's Malignant Hearts, but instead of being in jewelry, they are in armors. And these armors have like packs, and to use specific vampiric powers, you need to have enough packs to apply them. The vampiric powers kind of look like glyphs, and there's this own little like circle where you put the vampiric powers in. But putting season mechanics aside, because the things that we really care about were the quality of life changes and also the endgame bosses. And they also added a new endgame boss for the season, so instead of Varshan, we have Lord Zir, and he has new minions. These minions honestly just look like vampiric reskins of current monsters that we have in the game, but they really talked them up and they said that they're really cool, so we'll see. Another thing that they discussed, part of the Season of Blood, is the Blood Harvest. Now this looks kind of like a reskin of the Helltides, and they said that there's a huge emphasis on monsters that are vampiric, and you can collect vampiric keys to open vampiric caches, so just like Helltides. And there's also a new reward system implemented in the game for this season called the Hunter's Acclaim. Now let's talk about the endgame bosses that they added. So the Echo of Varshan actually remains in the game, but he'll be accessed differently. So now there's a dungeon under the Tree of Whispers, and when you go into it, you need to collect items, which you get from completing Whispers, to be able to summon Varshan, and he has specific unique items that can drop. You can access the Echo of Varshan in World Tier 3 and 4. Another World Tier 3 and 4 boss will be Gregoire the Gallivantic Saint. So to summon him, you actually need to complete Helltides, and you'll get components and materials that you need to summon him. And now only accessible in World Tier 4 is the Beast in the Ice. You need to complete Nightmare Dungeons above Tier 30 to be able to collect materials and components to summon him. Just like in Season 1 where you had the Echo of Varshan and regular Varshan, Lord Zir has a questline version, and then he has an Uber Lord Zir, which you get components to summon him from world bosses and Legion events. And upon completion of Gregoire and the Echo of Varshan, you'll actually get components that you'll be able to summon Duriel, the King of Maggots. Duriel will have a chance to drop super uniques, which the devs said that these uniques will finally stop being so elusive and you'll actually be able to get some finally. I do think that these bosses are really cool, and I like that they're utilizing things that are implemented in the game and giving them more purpose so that you can spawn them and you have to farm them to get the components. I don't think that this is enough endgame things to keep players interested for long. They'll run these bosses and things, and I think they'll still get bored, and not everyone wants to just like go for the boss. So now for general improvements, they finally are implementing the Scroll of Escape to work for hardcore players when they disconnect from a game. So it'll automatically trigger and port them to a safe location. I know a lot of disconnections have killed a lot of hardcore players, so I hope this helps. Instances now grant a bonus to experience, and they persist after death. So after death is more for softcore players. Experience bonuses are now greater with the world tier bonuses. When you start a new character and you skipped campaign, 10 waypoints will be unlocked, which means 2 in each zone. So this kind of eliminates a bit of the running around that you need to do to grab all the waypoints. Renown rewards will now persist between seasons and new characters. Now this, I used to like the Renown. I didn't mind doing it because it was something to do. I didn't mind the grind. I kind of enjoyed it. But then they like made it so that they carry over seasons, and now if you've completed them 100%, you'll always have it. And that kind of takes away from things to do in the game. But I know a lot of players hated it. But honestly, I think that Renown should just go away at this point. I think that they screwed it up. And like the Paragon bonuses and stuff from it, like I just think that it was handled wrong. Overworld monsters in World Tier 3 and 4 no longer trail the player's level after 55 and 75 respectively. I don't like this either because I think this will prevent people from farming in the overworld now, and this takes away from overworld farming altogether. It'll just keep players in the dungeon, less player interaction in the overworld online, and they also added 2 additional character slots. So for towns and vendors, these are pretty big quality of life changes, and I'm happy with them. Actually, someone mentioned this in the comments in my quality of life video, that the occultist should be at the Tree of Whispers, so glad that they added that. Stashes had been added to all small towns, thank God, with waypoints. So this is great because if you are near a small town, you don't have to go to a major city. They also added additional stashes in capital cities near important vendors, which is great because this prevents players from constantly just running around the towns. Like, they're really big towns. They were kind of designed wrong, and just sometimes it took too long to go back and forth between everything. The purveyors of curiosities are now closer to the waypoints and not far off to the distance, so you'll never forget to gamble your obols. Never be like, oh, I'm in a Helltide, crap, I'm maxed on obols, and have to deal with that. They made big improvements to the mounts, so now they're less likely to get stuck or slow down unexpectedly. This is huge because mounts were like really annoying. And they can actually automatically jump over traversals, thank God, because sometimes like you'd be running, you hit space, it doesn't jump, and then you're stuck and your horse is like, I don't know what to do, I'm just a horse. They increased the base speed of the horse by 14%. Top speed remains untouched. And they improved the speed when using a mouse and keyboard because it was a lot better on controller. And also now using spur breaks through barricades. Finally, you don't need to dismount. And they actually changed the cooldowns on the mounts, 10 seconds to 5 seconds for manual dismount. And when you're knocked off the horse, it's 30 seconds to 15 seconds. And dismount combat skill is now 10 seconds to 3 seconds, so that's cool. For nightmare dungeons, they made it teleporting to a nightmare dungeon. You actually teleport inside the dungeon instead of outside, which takes away the double loading screen, so that's great. Dungeon events were improved with the monster density increased, and NPCs will no longer get one shot in later world tiers, so that's good. For traps, the overall readability has been improved, and CC has been greatly reduced, which is really good. You won't be concerned about dying if you get CC'd from a trap. And they buffed the amount of experience that you'll be getting from Nightmare Dungeons, which is great. For Nightmare Dungeon afflictions, they changed backstabbers. So before you could actually like get one shot by a backstabber, but now they changed it to cause you to become vulnerable, and vulnerable damage taken is increased by an X amount %. They changed the monster critical resist. Instead of being like a base of 60%, which was like taking away all of your damage, they changed it to reduce the amount of your critical strikes for 3 seconds by X% and stacking up to Y. And Death Pulse no longer happens on monsters that already have an on-death explosion, and death pulses will stop spawning on top of one another. Lightning Storm was also changed a little bit, and when you're in the bubble and being shocked, you'll grant a 35% movement speed bonus for 5 seconds, and Lightning Storm will only start when players are in combat, and they'll ensure that Lightning Storm always has a direct path for the player to get into. In Drifting Shade, the duration was changed from 5 seconds to 3 seconds, and respawn time was increased by 2 seconds. They also made it so that objectives in Nightmare Dungeons are not required. You can just find the boss. This saves so much time. And they placed the objectives on critical path throughout the dungeon. So now if you're one person playing by yourself, you don't have to search for all 4 bloodstones. This is huge. This will reduce the amount of time wasted in Nightmare Dungeons. And if you're just powering through to level up your glyphs, there you go. They also discussed how dungeon layouts were redesigned. They made them less clunky in a way that if you made the wrong turn and missed an objective, you don't have to like go all the way around. The objectives are now like on the path and more visible. They also prevented it from feeling too linear. Legion events are changed from every 30 minutes to 25 minutes, and the timer on them is increased to 10 minutes from 5 minutes. So you'll be less likely to miss Legion events, which is great because I always miss them. There'd be like 3 seconds left when I checked. And world boss spawns changed from every 6 hours to every 3.5 hours. So this is really good for players that can only play at a set time. They're less likely to miss the world boss as there's going to be more spawns of it. And they also increased the timer for that to 60 minutes from 30 minutes. And 15 minutes before the world boss, there's a broadcast for all players that the world boss is happening in 15 minutes, which is great. Now you really won't miss a world boss because you'll know about it. For endgame activities, the Whisper caches, they would always grant you like a really low tier Nightmare Sigil. Now this changed to a Nightmare Sigil within 5 tiers of one that you just completed. This is great because then hopefully the Nightmare Sigil isn't just trash right off the hop. The gold reward was greatly increased from Whisper caches. Experience from the Whispers and Hell Tides was increased substantially. In Whisper caches, like when you would select a cache of rings and you got like a bunch of helmets and then one ring, now all those items will actually be rings instead. So they'll adhere to the item slot of the cache. And Helltide's chests are a little bit better to read, and they'll have specific icons on the map to indicate their type. For UI and UX, you can now mark items as favorite or junk in your stash as well as your inventory. And items that are favorited cannot be salvaged or sold. So this is big. You won't accidentally salvage something that you want to keep. With selling it, you can buy it back, but when you salvage it, it's gone. Extracted aspects will now be grouped together within the inventory and stash. Sorting of normal affixes will now be improved to be more consistent. So this means like plus the strength will always be on top. This is great. It's a lot easier to like compare your loot that way. Dungeon map tooltips will also show which dungeon affixes you get when you complete when there's a whisper at that dungeon. And the stash can now be filtered and searched so that you can find items more quickly. This looks very clean and nice. Like they have a bunch of buttons like weapons, helmets, gloves, and they also have the search button. If you search for a specific aspect, you will be able to find it in your stash. They also implemented streamer mode, so anyone that's streaming before, you can hide names and BNet tags. And they finally added the option of hiding combat text like vulnerable, fortified, because you could hide the damage numbers, but now you can hide the text. Thank God, because I get very overwhelmed seeing all those words on my screen. They also added auto run, so if you keybind it and it is selected, your character will follow where your mouse is going and you don't have to keep clicking, and it will end it when another action is initiated. And the minimap is also zoomed out to show a wider area. This is really good for nightmare dungeons, so preventing less backtracking right off the bat. You don't need to look at the map, potentially get hit. And gems will no longer be dropping the same way that we know them. They'll actually be dropping as gem shards and go into your materials pocket. And when you want to make a full-size gem, you can go to the jeweler, craft that, and when you're done with that gem, you can actually salvage it back into gem shards. This is huge to save a lot of space for those people that like to collect gems. Enchantment costs have been updated, so they actually are more expensive for the first one, but as you continue to enchant, price jump won't go up as much, so in the long run it is cheaper. And we're gonna see less normal magic rare loot going through. As we get into higher world tiers, those items will actually just be dropping as crafting materials instead, so it'll stop cluttering up the ground as much. This is really nice, and for people that are always running out of crafting materials, you'll be getting more. They're updating Smoldering Ashes going forward, so right now, like, to get all the Smoldering Ashes and put in all your season blessings, you need to hit level 100 to unlock them all. So now the final unlock will be sooner so that you can actually benefit through the leveling process of your Smoldering Ashes and Season Blessings. They also mentioned how Diablo 4 is coming to Steam and will be available on the Steam Deck. Someone asked them if they have any plans about itemization, and they did say that they have big ideas and big plans coming with big improvements, but as of right now, they provided no info, so I really wonder what direction they'll be going. Another person asked them if there's more plans for open world elements, and the way that they answered their question, they were very unsure, and obviously it wasn't something that they're planning on. They did say that the seasonal things are the overworld plan. Reset scrolls were mentioned, like the Scrolls of Amnesia. Have plans for something about them. I hope it's not something that you just get one at the end when you complete your entire season journey. They could maybe be purchasable or maybe craftable, but that's not something that's coming for this season, and I don't think for next season. There's also plans about the Codex of Power being improved in the future, but nothing as of right now. Leaderboards are coming in season 3, and of course there was absolutely no news about stash tabs. They pulled the "we hear you, we see you, and we'll address it eventually." And let's not forget, they're finally adding cosmetics on town portals, because that's why everyone quit playing Diablo 4. So my overall thoughts of the dev update, they did make a lot of good quality of life improvements, and this is a step in the right direction. I do think that the end game that they added is not enough to bring players back. Just added some bosses I do like that they added stuff, and I like that they made it that you need to do certain things to fight these bosses. Like, you can't just walk into a dungeon and bam, you got it. With the experience being boosted, your leveling process is actually 40% faster. I don't know if I like that they're like speeding up the game again, but it is nice that more people will be able to achieve level 100, especially if they're planning on adding more endgame and they want people to fight these endgame bosses. I really do hope that they'll continue to look at the endgame and add more. I think time will tell. Let me know in the comments if they hit the mark on quality of life for you, and how you feel about the endgame bosses and how you feel overall. And next week we'll have another video about their second stream. Thanks for watching. Bye! Experience bonuses are now multiplicative. Alright, experience bonuses are now multiplicative. Experience. That was good.